Hi everybody, it's Maria at Read, Create, Repeat Homeschool, and today I'm going to do the mid-year book Freakout tag. I will share some of my favorites as well as some ones that I'm excited about reading in the future. Feel free to leave in the comments if you have thoughts on any of the ones that I have read or am going to read, or some of your favorites. So the first question is, what is the best book you've read this year? And I picked two, a fiction and a nonfiction. The fiction I just finished last night. It's Colson Whitehead's The Underground Railroad, but I knew I was going to love it, so I'm pretty excited that I got to read it. It's not too long, but I did have to stop 3 times because it's very intense at certain points. It's the story of Cora as a runaway slave and her escape up north. And Colson does a really good job of making you feel like you're in her shoes. You're feeling uncomfortable when she's uncomfortable. You're feeling threatened when she's threatened. I love that he also worked in other people's narratives, whether they're a slave hunter, other runaways that escaped with her or that she left behind. And it was a beautiful book. It's very intense, so don't make it an audiobook around kids, but definitely pick it up. The nonfiction is Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. This book was another one that is about race that made me think a lot. He is an African-American lawyer who founded the Equal Justice Initiative, and this story is talking about the problems that he sees with the justice system that are problems because of race. And this book is kind of what started me down the rabbit trail of learning more about where I fit in with my white privilege card and where I need to check myself a little bit. The most poignant scene in it for me was when he is talking about a police officer who stopped him because he was sitting in his car outside of his house looking at his phone late at night. And I have 2 boys. I've never felt like I had to talk with them about being careful late at night just because of the color of their skin. And it's frustrating to me that that is a very common experience among people that are not white. And it's frustrating, but it made me want to dive in deeper. So I definitely pick up Brian Stevenson's Just Mercy. It's a good one. Next question is best sequel that you read this year. I don't do a ton of series books, but the best series that I read this year it's the 3rd one's coming out in November, and I will have it done in like 2 days because I'm really excited. It's called The Queen of the Tearling series. It's by Erica Johansson. So I read the sequel this year, The Invasion of the Tearling. And in the series, Kelsey is a queen who's 19 years old. She has not been living in her kingdom until she has become queen. And she comes to her kingdom and has to deal with all of the bad stuff that her uncle, who has been the regent, has not been dealing with. There's human trafficking. There's kingdoms that are threatening theirs. It's a really good story. There's some political intrigue. There's also a little bit of fantasy kind of woven in, but if you're not a huge fantasy person, don't let that turn you off because it's really well done. I don't want to do any more spoilers as far as other things that are woven in, but it's really, really great. You'll find some familiar things in there. It kind of feels set in medieval ages a little bit, so it reads more like historical fiction. But I really appreciate her as a character. She was one of my favorite people to read about this year, and I'm so pumped for the 3rd one to come out this year. The next question is number 3. What is the new release that you are very excited about reading that you haven't gotten to yet? This is Present Over Perfect by Shauna Nyquist. The subtitle is Leaving Behind Frantic for a Simpler, More Soulful Way of Living. And the foreword's by Brené Brown, who I love, so I'm pretty excited about that. Shauna Nyquist is a Christian, so if that bothers you, just be aware of that. She's not overly preachy about things, though. In this book, though, she's just talking about how she realized she was saying yes to too many things, and it was taking away from her intentional living and running her life. And so I'm very excited about reading what she has to say. I love her writing. It always makes me feel like I've got a warm cup of tea in my hand and a friend that you're talking to. So I'm excited to read that. The fiction that I'm excited about reading is Behold the Dreamers by, I'm not going to get this right, Imbulo Mibue. And it is a story of an immigrant family that is coming to the States, or has come to the States, and they are working for a richer white family in New York City right before the economy kind of fell out. And it should be pretty interesting to hear what the author has to think about wealth and happiness and what makes the American dream or not makes the American dream. So I'm very excited about that. So the next question is most anticipated release. I already mentioned Fate of the Tearling, but if you don't know this is happening, this is happening. It's very exciting. Harry Potter is being released as illustrated books by Jim Kay, who is an amazing author. They are not inspired by the movie art. This is my favorite page, Hagrid with his pink umbrella. But they're releasing one book a year. I don't know how they're going to do it when the books get fatter, but these are just beautiful, beautiful. I can't express to you just how beautiful these pictures are. They're amazing. You can kind of see there's Harry, the mirror of Erised. I love Harry Potter, as most people do, but I'm excited about this coming out. I don't know if it's going on my Christmas wish list or if I'm going to break down and get it before then, because I'm really excited about it. Number 5, biggest disappointment of the year. I'm going to go with The Yoga Max's Discontent by Kanan Bajaj. I was really excited about reading from an Indian author going to India. I went to India this year, so I kind of jumped down that hole a little bit. And in it, Max he's a character who has just lost his mother and he's trying to figure out how to be content again. So he decides to go to India, as you do when you're looking for contentment in life. And I was a little frustrated just because of the hype around it. It felt a little bit like Eat, Pray, Love, only Elizabeth Gilbert grew a lot more, I feel like, in her journeys. And he grew a little bit, but I felt like for as much as he went through, he should have gotten life down a lot more. I did appreciate the imagery. It did feel a lot like India. So I don't know. You might like it. It was not my cup of tea. So number 6, biggest surprise. I've been reading more Margaret Atwood this year. I'm getting ready to read her Mad Adam series. And this book, she wrote The Handmaid's Tale, so if you're familiar with that, but her brain is a magical work of art where I don't know where she gets these ideas. This is The Heart Goes Last. And basically it's a story of maybe 20, 30 years in the future. It is a community that has set itself apart. There's a prison, but there's also people who have opted into the community because they have no money. And so 6 months of the year, you are in a nice house, kind of having a regular life. And the other 6 months of the year, you're going into the prison. And you flip-flop with another couple or another family for the 6 months. And which is all a different idea anyway, because it makes you ask questions about the prison system and how people are treated. But the main couple, ends up falling in love with their counterparts and having affairs, and so you kind of ask about what you can forgive, what you can't forgive, what you really know about yourself and who you're with. And it just, after the affairs, it starts to get even weirder. And there's a trip to Las Vegas. There's some conspiracy with the people who are leading the prison. And then there's Elvis impersonators and robotic sex dolls. And it just gets crazy. So if that is an exciting thing for you, go for it. If you're not sure, I'd still go for it. It was very well written. I didn't put it down because it was you just kept wondering, where is this going? And it just kept getting weirder. So that was my biggest surprise for the year. The next one is the best new author, and he is not new by any means, but John Steinbeck. I started with Of Mice and Men. I read The Pearl, and I'm getting ready to read Grapes of Wrath. I read The Red Pony in middle school, but I don't remember it being this amazing. He writes so vividly, and his language makes you feel like you're watching the story. So I'm excited to see more John Steinbeck. The next question is fictional crush, number 8. And I'm not a person who gets crushes on literary characters very often, but I'm going to go ahead and say Mark Watney from The Martian that Andy Weir wrote, just because I don't like not answering questions. But Mark Watney, if you don't know what the story is, he's an astronaut that gets left on Mars, and they think he's dead, so he has to figure out how to survive until he's rescued, or they figure out he's there and not dead. It's just a really crazy story. He is perpetually in danger. Every 5 minutes, there's a new thing he has to solve and figure out. But intelligence and ingenuity are my biggest turn-ons. So I liked Mark Watney. And he was also really funny, which is my number 3 biggest turn-on. And I just liked it. So if you are not a science person, it was still very readable. The humor made it totally worthwhile. If not, check out the movie if you don't want to read the book, but the book is even better because there's even more stuff he has to get rid of and figure out in the book. So that's Fictional Crush. Number 9, newest favorite character. I'm going to go with Ove from A Man Called Ove, and I think that's how you say his name. Frederick Bachman wrote this, and Ove is a grumpy man that you figure out why he is grumpy as the story goes along. He's dealing with a lot of grief in his life and some other questions that he has about the next thing he needs to do. But he keeps getting thrown into these situations where he has to help his neighbors. And he's a good guy at his heart, so he helps his neighbors and they change him and he changes them. And I love any stories where you realize that we're all interwoven stories together and we all are one big community. But I also really love it when authors remind you that people have motivations that you can't see all the time. And Ove made you think about the people that frustrate you at the store or on the road that are just grumpy, and then you think something else is going on that I can't see. So I really liked Ove. He was a great character to fall in love with. Number 10 was books that made you cry. And I picked 2 because I cried a lot, but these were the ones that I cried a lot, and wept in. First one is Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This is written maybe for older children, YA, but also adults. The illustrator is Jim Kay, who also did the Harry Potter book that I already showed you. And they're going to do a movie of this. Liam Neeson's playing the monster. But this is the story of a boy who is dealing with his mom dying of cancer. And there's a monster that comes to his door, his window, and he talks to the monster. He doesn't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing or how it plays into what he's going to have to deal with in real life. But it was a beautiful story, especially if you're dealing with grief or you know somebody dealing with grief. It is a great book to hand them. So Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. It also made me jump into the Patrick Ness hole of fiction because he's a good writer. This one is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. A lot of people have seen this book and I've already read this book. I'm hesitant often to read things when they're popular. I like to get to them before they're popular or long after, but the cover art was so pretty that I couldn't resist. It's a historical fiction book about 2 main characters. There's a girl who is a blind girl who is trying to survive the war, World War II. And there is a boy who's from Germany who ends up kind of falling into the Nazi regime and figuring out what's truthful, what's not truthful, and where he fits in. But it's their stories back and forth, and it was very well written. I loved the language. I wrote down several quotes from it because they're just so beautiful. It made you remember the beautiful things about life, even when there's so much ugliness around you. And I like books like that. So I did cry a lot. It was very, very good. And I know why it was popular now. So number 11, this will make you laugh. Books that made you happy. This one is a nonfiction. It's called Come As You Are, The Surprising New Science That Will Transform Your Sex Life by Emily Nagoski. And I know that might be surprising for some people. This was a very good book. Whether you are in a relationship or not, no matter how you feel about your body, your sexuality, it made you feel like your normal is perfectly okay for being a normal, and you don't have to change yourself. You just have to figure out what your body likes and what your brain's issues are. I don't know. I'm going to be giving this as a gift to several of my friends with a package of Post-it notes because I know we're all very, very different people, but I loved that Emily made you feel like you were exactly who you were supposed to be. And I learned a lot. I'm not going to say more about why this made me happy, but it made me happy. And so definitely check out that book. The next one is the most beautiful book you have acquired this year. And I have two, Nature Anatomy, The Curious Parts and Pieces of the Natural World by Julia Rothman. And this one is just about nature. So there's all different kinds of plants, animals, constellations. So it's nonfiction, but it's really a beautiful kind of nature guide. It made me want to journal a lot more and do more of my own illustrations, and any books that make me do that are a good thing. She has also done farm anatomy, and she's getting ready to release food anatomy, which I'm very excited about because food makes me happy. So I would check that one out. It's very pretty. It'd be a great coffee table book, or even just a nature guide to hand to a kid. The other one is Trailblazers, an illustrated guide to the women who explored the world, written and illustrated by Lisa Graves. Women explorers always excited me growing up. Nellie Bly was one of my favorite historical characters. Her trip around the world in 80 days. I just love, the whole. She really went for it. There's Amelia Earhart in here. There's several other ones that you've probably heard of, but then there's some that you haven't, like Fanny Bullock Workman. She's a mountaineer, and there's my Nellie Bly. I love her. So I would really recommend picking this up. If you probably learn something you don't know, hand it to a kid, hand it to, a mom, just anybody who likes exploring and beautiful art. This is a good one. So the last question is books that you really want to get to this year, and I have a few. I have a long list, but these are the ones that I definitely want to get to. Grapes of Wrath by Steinbeck, I already told you about. I've never read this. I just didn't get a chance to, and I heard about it several years ago, and I'm very excited about getting to this finally. Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. If you didn't know that it's more than just a film, several people have been reading this on BookTube, and I'm going to bite the bullet and read it too. Then the last one I want to show you is Boys in the Boat, and yes, I know a lot of you have already read this one too, but 9 Americans and the Epic Quest for Gold at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. It's written by Daniel James Brown, and I'm just excited about getting to see heroes that are ordinary rise above bad things, and I'm excited, especially after the Olympics. It kind of gave me another push, like, I just need to bite the bullet and get this one, even though everybody's already read it. So those are my books that I wanted to share with you. What are you excited about reading this year? Are there things that you want to get to before the year closes out? I can't believe September is just around the corner. So thanks for listening. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. One more thing. I'm adding this at the end because I forgot. It's the last question. Favorite BookTube members. I have several. So the ones that have been around for a while that I really love, Words of a Reader, I think should have way more subscribers. I'm really excited about the Winnie the Pooh read along. And also the restricted section, you guys crack me up. They often have beer while they review, and they're just really great. So I love them, as well as some new people. There's Fox Clouds, which I've just found her videos, and she's a little bit newer, so I want to go ahead and make sure she gets a shout out. Life Between Words has been around about 4 or 5 months. She's another mom, and I love when she does recommendations, even if there's crazy in the background. She just makes you feel right at home. And finally, Unmanaged Mischief. She's pretty great. I'm excited. I saw her on Goodreads as well, and I'm excited about some of the recommendations that she has, as well as some of the upcoming reads that she's going to do. So go ahead and do this tag if you haven't yet. I have not been tagged by anybody, obviously, but go ahead and keep watching, keep reading, and see you guys later. Sorry for the ad. Bye.